Welcome to ICODES 2026, Conference on Communication, Digital Ecosystem, and Society. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your hosts, Master of Ceremony Sahwa Lailatus Zahira and Stifian Desnadi Priyambodo.
Before we begin our Day 2 session, we would like to thank all of our importance. A big thank you to Universitas Negeri Malang, the Faculty of Social Science, Aspikom Pusat, Aspikom Jawa Timur, and 4 co-host institutions: Universitas Brawijaya, Universitas Tribuana Tunggadewi, Universitas Atmajaya, and UIN Sunan Kalijaga, Yogyakarta. And to Pop Survey by Populix, our official sponsor, for their invaluable support in making ICODES 2026 possible.
Tes. Tes. Oke.
Welcome to ICODES 2026, International Conference on Communication, Digital Ecosystem, and Society. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your hosts, Master of Ceremony Sahwa Lailatus Zahira and Stifian Desnadi Priyambodo.
Good morning to our distinguished keynote speakers, honorable moderators, respected presenters, participants, ladies and gentlemen.
Before we begin our Day 2 session, we would like to thank all of our importance. A big thank you to Universitas Negeri Malang, the Faculty of Social Sciences, Aspikom Pusat, Aspikom Jawa Timur, our 4 co-host institutions: Universitas Brawijaya, Universitas Tribuana Tunggadewi, Universitas Atmajaya, and UIN Sunan Kalijaga, Yogyakarta. And to Pop Survey by Populix, our official sponsor, for the invaluable support in making ICODES 2026 possible.
Welcome back to the second day of International Conference on Communication, Digital Ecosystem and Society, ICODES 2026.
We hope you had a pleasant morning and are ready for another engaging day of insightful discussion and knowledge sharing.
Ladies and gentlemen, to commence our second day of ICODES 2026, please rise, wherever you are, for the national anthem of the Republic of Indonesia, Indonesia Raya, and Smart Song.
Thank you. Please be seated. Yesterday, we had the opportunity to listen to inspiring keynote speeches and many research presentations on communication, digital transformation, and society. Today, we are excited to continue with another keynote session, followed by a closing ceremony and the most awaited moment of ICODES 2026, the awarding ceremony.
Before we begin, may we kindly remind all the participants to keep their camera on and mute their microphone throughout the sessions. If you need any technical assistance, please use the Zoom chat to contact us.
Ladies and gentlemen, to guide today's keynote session, it is our pleasure to invite today's moderator, Ratna Triwuryandanu SECOM MECOM.
Without further ado, the virtual stage is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the final day of ICODES 2026. I'm Ratna and I have the pleasure of moderating this session. But before that, before I begin today's keynote panel session, I would like to express my warm thank you to all of the participants who have joined us today and since yesterday at ICODES 2026. Thank you for being part of our very first international conference that organized by us, the Communication Science Study Program at Universitas Negeri Malang. Okay, today panel session, we are really honored to have us today two outstanding keynote speaker, Dr. Aran Ridley, PhD from Monash University, and Professor Yuyun Wahyu Izzati Surya from Universitas Erlangga. Both of them will offer us a fresh and valuable insight to their perspective on data storytelling and visual design, as well as on multicultural human-machine communication in the algorithmic era. So I hope you guys can enjoy this final day of ICODES 2026 because there will be a Q&A session as well as yesterday. There will be an opportunity to ask a question which will be answered in the Q&A session in the end of the panel for each speaker. Before I invite our first keynote speaker of the day, let's take a moment to watch his profile.
As we open the second day of ICODES 2026, it is now our privilege to introduce Dr. Aran Ridley, Assistant Professor in Marketing and Digital Communication at Monash University, Indonesia. He holds a PhD in Media and Communication from the University of Leeds, UK, with research focus in data visualization, data storytelling, and digital methods. Since January 2026, he serves as Program Coordinator for the Master of Marketing and Digital Communication at Monash University, Indonesia.
Okay, let's welcome our first keynote speaker virtually, Dr. Aran Ridley, PhD. I give you a virtual applause, Dr. Aran. Thank you so much. Okay, how are you, Dr. Aran?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you for having me here today.
Yes, thank you so much for taking the time with us at ICODES 2026. It's really an honor for us to have the opportunity to discuss with you today. So you teach at Monash University in Indonesia. Is that in Tangerang or?
Yeah, we're in Bastay,
Oh,
but
yes.
technically we're in kind of Tangerang.
Okay, so you're already quite familiar with Indonesia then and the hot weather in
Yeah,
Bastay.
I've actually been in Indonesia for 4 years, so I'm quite acclimatized to the weather now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, you should come to Malang sometime.
I'd like to visit actually.
Okay, Dr. Ridley, I read your profile and skimmed through some of your writing, and I noticed that since maybe 2021, you focus on data visualization, which I find it really interesting because if we talk about data, it's already clear its number and its content. And we really exciting to make this today's session with you that I really think this will be very engaging to follow because it's about data that we actually talk about it every day, maybe. So Dr. Ridley, everyone, will take us through his approach across three interconnected dimensions: teaching, practice, and learning to notice. Right, Dr. Ridley?
Right, yeah.
Okay. Dr. Ridley, you have around 50 minutes to deliver your presentation, and afterward there will be a Q&A session where I will read the question from the participant, and you can answer it in the end of your session.
Okay.
Okay, without any further ado, Dr. Ridley, the virtual room is yours.
Is it okay to share my slides? Yeah.
Wait, I give you permission.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead. Thank
I
you.
will just quickly share those. If you bear with me just a moment as I get it to the right page. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
And as usual, when it comes to online, I'll ask the question, can you see my slides? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good.
I
Thank you
can
very
see.
much.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so I wasn't expecting to kind of have the welcome video like that, but it kind of saves a little bit of my introduction. I will kind of cover a little bit more as to who I am. But first, I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak today. It's a real pleasure to be here and to have the opportunity to contribute to this year's theme on communication algorithmic societies. I'm just sad that I'm not able to attend the conference yesterday. I was actually teaching. We have a new undergraduate cohort at Monash University, Indonesia, and I'm actually teaching on the design program. And I am actually teaching a little bit around kind of infographics in that program as well. So it's kind of crossing over into undergrad study as well. So my talk will be, as you introduced, covering kind of three main areas, and the main kind of overarching kind of theme is data storytelling and visual design beyond numbers in the algorithmic era. And that's probably a good summarization of kind of where my research currently sits. So I'll probably use my talk to go around in circles, talk about a few things, and try and connect, my teaching practice, my pedagogical approach with my practice, and kind of broader ideas and kind of issues that we have in studying kind of the digital, which is my area of interest. So I want to start kind of just with something before I'm going to go into my main talk. But the truth is really, when I was thinking about this keynote, I kept coming back to a simple kind of observation, whether we realize it or not, many of us begin and end our day with data. So whether this is, even before we've had our first coffee, we might have checked the weather forecast, or maybe in Indonesia, we're checking the pollution count using apps like Nefas. We look at Google Maps to see how long our commute might take. We've glanced at our step count or sleep tracker. We've looked at engagement statistics on social media, or read a news article illustrated with a chart or map. So sort of on screen here, I've got a few of those examples. Anybody who is using kind of Spotify probably engages with their Wrapped at the end of each year. I do the same. I have a quick look at that. That's an example of a data story. Google kind of map tracking is also a data story. I'm sure quite a lot of people here, the bottom left, you see kind of an image of somebody checking their Strava statistics. I'm quite sure quite a lot of people here, if you're anything like the people in Bay, where I'm based, or in Jakarta, are using kind of Strava or even your Apple Watch to kind of track your runs or your cycles. Because particularly in Bay, there's quite a lot of kind of running events that take place, and as well as in Jakarta, we have the car-free days, and I'm pretty sure everybody in this kind of conference today is engaged in some form of either passive data collection or active data collection and engagement with that data as it's presented back to us as a data story. So data has become quietly one of the dominant languages of our everyday life. So it's not just for scientists or analysts like me kind of collecting data, or you collecting data for your research. Everyone is engaging with it, kind of the grandmas, the young kids, everybody's engaging with these kind of datas as well as data stories in their everyday life. So when we talk about living in an information society, we're increasingly talking about an algorithmic society, so one in which information we encounter is organized, kind of filtered and prioritized by digital platforms. So Algorithms increasingly influence what we see, what captures our attention, and sometimes even what we believe is important. I'm not a TikTok user, but I'm pretty sure again that quite a lot of people in this attending today are quite active on TikTok. Um, Similarly, Instagram or Twitter X, any of the things they use has algorithmic kind of sorting, and the likelihood is that we all have very different, For You pages or whatever we might call it, and very different kind of feeds based upon our kind of in terms of our interactions. So what I would say as well is that, dashboards, and with a few prompts as well, what we're thinking about, and I'll come back to this at the end of the talk as well, is that AI can also generate charts. Dashboards can be built automatically. Interactive visualizations can be created with no coding experience. So the technical barriers to producing data visualizations are kind of falling rapidly. So I might be a trained, data visualization kind of expert, but it's the barrier of access is kind of decreasing all the time. But this raises an important question. If everyone can make charts, what becomes the role of communication professionals? And this is, a question I think for everyone attending today. You're all enrolled on a communication kind of program. And I don't think the answer, is to make kind of prettier charts, nor do I think it's necessary to learn the latest software. Instead, I think that our role and your role as kind of students in the future as well is becoming even more important, because the challenge today is no longer about producing information. The challenge is helping people make sense of it. And that's where the idea of data storytelling comes in. So data storytelling is often described as the process of turning data into stories. That's quite self-explanatory, and that's certainly true. But today, I'd like to offer a slightly different perspective. I'd like to argue that data storytelling is fundamentally, a communication practice. It's about designing experiences that help people understand complex ideas. So it's about deciding what to show, what to leave out, how to sequence information, how to communicate uncertainty, and how to connect data with people's everyday lives. So in other words, data storytelling isn't simply about numbers. It's about kind of communicating that meaning. So over the last few years, and perhaps as you introduced me to right at the beginning, since probably 2021 especially as well, I've been exploring this idea through kind of different but connected kind of projects. And I'll explore this kind of through three lenses, I guess, here. So the first is my teaching. So recently I've been kind of focusing on redesigning how students kind of learn data analytics as part of the Master of Marketing and Digital Communication. So not focusing on software, but helping them to become kind of better communicators. Second comes from my own creative practice. So one thing that perhaps isn't in the introduction for me today is that I actually did my bachelor in animation. So I actually did a kind of a practical animation-based undergraduate. So I was trained, as an artist in my kind of former life, and did actually kind of work kind of as a freelance kind of illustrator designer, graphic designer for many years before I returned back to academia and kind of took on more, combining just theoretical and pedagogical approach to the kind of my creative practice. So I've been experimenting with different forms of visual storytelling that move beyond conventional charts and infographics. And the third, which I've kind of called in this talk, is learning to notice, is centered around this idea of kind of data walking that I've been doing. And so I'll talk a little bit about my example of a data walking and crafting workshop I ran at Monash University, Indonesia recently, where I kind of asked an unusual question of the participants, which is, what if data storytelling begins before we even collect data? I also kind of made them kind of think about what was and wasn't data, and I'll kind of cover that later in the talk. So these three projects have led me to think differently about what data storytelling can be, particularly in societies where algorithms increasingly shape what we see, what we share, and what we understand. So today, rather than giving you a list of techniques for making better data visualizations, I have taught that in the past, and I can again if people want me to, I'd like to invite you to think about three provocations. So first, what if data storytelling is really about communication? What if data stories don't always have to look like graphs? And then finally, what if the most important part of a data story happens long before we open Excel, Tableau, Flourish, or even ChatGPT? And so I'd like to explore these questions with you today. So first of all, starting up with teaching. So one of the places where I've been developing some of this kind of practice and these ideas is through my teaching. So I coordinate a master's unit called Data Analytics for Communications as part of the Master for Marketing Data Communications here at Monash University. So I've ran that unit twice, first time last year, and then repeated this year where I kind of made some changes. I'll likely make changes to the unit again for next year based upon the feedback and my experience in delivering it. But each year I teach kind of students from very different backgrounds. So on the Master of Marketing Digital Communications, we don't have people purely from a comms or marketing background. We have in the current cohort somebody who did a bachelor in mathematics. We have people who come from international relations and from various different backgrounds. That means they're not necessarily communication or marketing experts. So some might have experience with data through their kind of jobs, whilst for many, this is their first encounter with analyzing large data sets or the process of collecting, cleaning, and visualizing data. So it can be quite a daunting kind of process for people. And so the first question I usually ask at the beginning of this unit is like, I ask people, what comes to mind when you hear the words data analysis? And students might talk about statistics, talk about coding, talk about dashboards and spreadsheets and software, but they don't really describe it as a communication activity. It's more about this kind of technical process involving data. And I think that's interesting because ultimately the purpose of analyzing data isn't simply to produce numbers. That's happening throughout our daily lives. I have my phone here. This is constantly passively in the background collecting, producing data. What we really want to do is help people understand something they didn't understand before through communicating this data. So this kind of changed the idea of how I approached the unit. So I would admit last year it was very much kind of technically focused, more around the software, more learning the kind of technical aspects of data analytics for communications. And this year I shifted it to a kind of storytelling angle, a communications angle. So rather than beginning with formulas or software, I began with something more familiar, which is conversation. And we actually this year analyzed YouTube comments. So I got a student to collect kind of thousands of comments responding to a particular video or topic. And through that, they could discover something important, from the immediate first kind of process of collecting data. And that is that real world data is messy. That's the first thing that they come across. The data that they actually collect from YouTube isn't immediately readable. The fact is the YouTube user interface already does that job of kind of cleaning it, making it kind of visible. But when you extract the data, it becomes incredibly messy. And this is also found in the data set itself. People don't write in complete sentences. They might use sarcasm. They might use emojis. There's quite often a combination of languages, perhaps Indonesian, English, as well as other kind of languages used in there. There'll be misspellings, there'll be humor, there'll be emotion, and sometimes kind of comments contradict each other. And so this becomes an interesting place to begin because communication itself is messy. The data is also messy. So through this, I get the students to kind of work through a series of kind of analytical stages. So there is still the technical aspect to this. So they clean the data, they explore the sentiment of the data, they try to identify reoccurring topics in the data through the topic analysis, and then they compare these conversations with broader kind of public interest using Google Trends. So each stage, I encourage students to kind of critically reflect using different questions. So it's not just what does the software produce, but what is each of these stages helping you to understand. So what is this helping me understand? Cleaning asks what can we trust? Sentiment asks how are people responding? Topic analysis is asking what are people really talking about? And then the Google Trend data asks does this conversation reflect a broader issue? Or is it specific to this community? So eventually students have kind of a rich collection of analysis and end up with kind of charts, with tables, with word frequencies, with sentiment scores, with topic clusters. And at this point, many students think they're finished. And actually, last year, that is pretty much where the unit finished. At that point where they conducted this analysis, they wrote a report on what they kind of found through this process. But this year, I told them, this is where the difficult part begins. You've conducted analysis, you've got the results, you've kind of got some trends and some results. And analysis alone rarely, changes understanding. Communication does is what I tell them. So instead of, submitting this report full of visualizations, I got them to produce an Instagram data story this year. So I have kind of two examples of the students' kind of data stories here. I asked their permission to show them as well. And I would like to kind of show more of their data stories that they produced. So this was kind of an Instagram data story. The one on the right was actually kind of interactive. So the roundabout actually is a video, so the cars are going round. It's kind of pie chart in the actual kind of finished one, but in my presentation, it's not got that kind of motion. So I got them to think about audience, I got them to think about sequence, I got them to think about narrative, annotation, and visual hierarchy, and how much information to include and what to leave out. And importantly, they have to answer one question, which is, why should anybody care about this? And that changes kind of everything. And their job was to, to take these sometimes even niche topics. I asked them to kind of do, I should say, a topic about Indonesia. So these are all, Indonesian related topics. On the left-hand side, it was looking at kind of Indonesian dances. And actually a video that kind of looked at different dances across Indonesia. And the analysis took in the idea of then how the spike in Google Trends actually lined up with the release of a horror movie, which actually included a particular kind of like dance in there as well. So there was this idea of kind of connecting these wider stories to the data that they kind of collected, and their job was to kind of make it visually interesting and potentially kind of something that people would engage with on Instagram or kind of social media. So for example, maybe next year I could switch it to TikTok because a lot more people may be active on TikTok, and we can also potentially scrape data from TikTok, though it might be slightly more complex than doing it using YouTube. So suddenly they're not really thinking like analysts, they're not producing a internal dashboard or producing reports for, their manager. They're thinking like communicators. So the charts are not disappearing. The charts are still here. You can see on the left-hand side, that's a line chart. On the right-hand side, that's a bar chart, quite kind of typical data visualizations, but the visual communication around it is much more kind of complex and interesting than just a simple bar chart. So I got students to kind of think about every decision and the purpose behind it and ask questions like, what should people notice first? How can they explain this complex analysis that they did without oversimplifying it? How can they communicate any uncertainty that they have in their data? And how do they keep someone's attention across multiple slides? And that is one of the challenges that we all face as kind of communicators. I'm sure there's data out there in terms of how many slides that actually people engage with and the time that they spend on each slide on Instagram. And I think I tried to give them that kind of challenge to kind of keep that interest across. I gave them 5 to 10 slides. I think like it was up to up to them to kind of decide what the best number of slides were to kind of keep that attention across there. So this is really, these are kind of communication questions I got them to ask. And for me, that's where the data storytelling begins. So it's not with software, it's not with the visualization, it's with designing understanding. So teaching this unit has convinced me, that real value of data analysis isn't producing information, it's translating information into something meaningful for other people. And perhaps one of the most important roles communication professionals have in algorithmic societies is communicating, this complex information. So it's not making data available. There's so much data already available. We can easily get hold of data. It's making it understandable to people. So watching students transform these data sets into stories made me reflect on my own practice as well. And it made me realize that if communication is the goal, perhaps we need to rethink what a data story looks like. Does it always need to be a chart? And are there other ways of helping people engage with data? And so that kind of like starting point for my own experiments in data storing, which does go back kind of a few years. So this is where I'll kind of link to talking about my data storytelling practice. So teaching students to think differently about data storytelling is part of my process and reflecting on my own practice. It's where I get to try out some of my experiments and my ideas that I kind of work on in my own practice to see if they're actually kind of applicable from a pedagogical point of view. So as I watch these students, transform data sets into stories, um, it's not a question of kind of how can I visualize this data, but how can I help people understand the data, which might sound like the same question. But when we ask kind of how to visualize data, we often begin by thinking about chart types. And it's very easy to kind of get that information online. There is kind of like a website that will kind of give you this list of different visualizations, the type of data it can visualize. We can very easily look at these kind of atlases or dictionaries or kind of sites that kind of look at the different kind of bar charts. So, should this data be a bar chart? Should this be a line graph? Should it be a scatter plot, an infographic, etc.? They are useful questions, but they should come quite later in the design process. So I find it much more useful to begin somewhere else. And I think about things like, you know, who is the story for? Where will people encounter it? How much time will they spend with it? What do I want them to notice? And perhaps most importantly, what kind of experience do I want them to have? So on screen actually at the moment is this taken from a data story that I did. So as I say, like I do data storytelling in kind of my own kind of professional life, perhaps sometimes outside of the academic kind of lens. So this was a piece I did for the Continentalist back in 2023, I think it got released. And this was just kind of based originally kind of on audio data. So I kind of recorded the sounds of street food vendors and some interviews with some street food vendors in actually Kramat Jati in East Jakarta. Out of curiosity, because it was when I was newly moved to Indonesia, and it was a very different experience to living in where I previously was, which was Germany briefly for a research position, and the UK before that. We don't have street food vendors who walk around the streets like this. We don't have those kind of sounds, and they're all, it was very interesting to me and start a kind of a point of even of me trying to just figure out, what was going on in Indonesia. And so like from this data story, you can search for it, I think online, if you look for my name and then like Continentalist, you'll come across the, the data stories that I've worked on kind of previously with them. I've worked on two. One was another Instagram piece around horror movies in Indonesia. But in this data story, we obviously have on the left-hand side a very kind of straightforward kind of graph, which is looking at mobile phone subscriptions in Indonesia. This is up to 2022 when I was doing the data story. So this numbers might be kind of different in 2025. But I have that kind of in this data story, there are these more kind of simple, straightforward kind of graphs like this. But then on the right-hand side, this is something we might kind of call a data comic, or at least kind of like a comic at its basic form. And this is where my audio data was kind of translated into a visual kind of format. So it's another way of kind of communicating, that data. We could very easily take that audio data that I recorded, transcribe it, and do similar to what we did here with the data storytelling piece here, which is actually taking kind of textual data, conducting sentiment analysis and topic analysis, and combining it with Google Trends, and we could easily still produce kind of visualizations related to this. But the focus that we actually went on with this data story was to kind of translate my audio into these kind of comic strips, into these kind of graphical communication. So it became another way of kind of creating engaging content based on my data. You can see it says listen to the hustle and bustle. So they used to be able to play sound. When I checked it the other day, the sound button had disappeared. So I think the actual audio might not be embedded in the data story anymore, but there is actually kind of sound embedded as part of this data story as well. It might just be temporarily kind of broken, but you can check it out and see if it works on your computer as well. But I want to say is kind of that, actually I can go through to the next one as well, is that, one of the questions, those questions I kind of talked about before in terms of what kind of experience I want people to have. These questions become kind of a starting point, And as they are a starting point, there's something interesting kind of happens. So the visual form is no longer predetermined. As I said, I started off with this kind of audio data and some of the and research, other things that I did. And there were various forms that audio data could take, as I say, sentiment analysis, topic analysis, a word cloud, even if you look at the topics that people are talking about. But really, the visual form is no longer predetermined. Different data stories demand different forms of communication. So some stories work as a single graphic. They can just be one infographic, but some stories kind of need a sequence to kind of go through a narrative. Some need illustration, like this one. Others need, photography, annotation, maps, or a combination of different visual languages. So in my own work, I've increasingly kind of experimented with storytelling formats that borrow as much from, editorial design and digital communication as I do from traditional information visualization. And many of these projects have been designed for Instagram. So the one on the right-hand side, you can see there, Monstrous Women, was written with a friend of mine, Johanna Belinda, was around kind of looking at the way that women are represented in horror movies, and specifically Indonesian kind of horror movies, so not horror movies from outside of Indonesia, all kind of locally produced horror movies. And again, with this, the data was kind of quite straightforward. I scraped data from IMDb, so I just collected all of the the data on horror movies, Indonesian horror movies from over history, I think up until 2020, early 2024. So we probably had a cutoff point. Now mid 2024, we had a mid cutoff point, and then we coded the data to assess whether like the protagonist, the main villain, the monster in the film was male or female. Just a very simple kind of like coding process, and found that most of kind of the the villains and the monsters were actually women in the kind of the horror movies. And so this became again a very visual data story. Again, you can check this out on Instagram. Again, we're kind of employing that kind of like illustrative kind of style to kind of communicate the data as well, kind of through this. So Instagram might seem one of the most I think might seem like an unusual place to discuss data storytelling, but I think it's kind of not just a place where we publish content. It kind of shapes how stories are told. So people aren't encountering 10 charts on one page. They're swiping, they're pausing, they're scrolling. So they move through information one frame at a time. So it kind of changes how I'm thinking about that communication. We have two different things here, I think, where the scrolling of a web page versus the swiping of an Instagram page. So instead of kind of asking questions like, can this chart explain everything? I can ask, what should people discover first? What should they discover next? And how can that curiosity carry them through the story? That's our challenge as well as communicators here, is to make people swipe through this data story to the final page. So this sequence becomes part of the communication. So the audience doesn't receive all the information at once. They're constructing understanding gradually, and it's our job to kind of construct that understanding. So, I've become increasingly interested in relationship between like narrative and visual metaphor. So sometimes a drawing, or an illustration or a familiar visual reference. So in this particular Monstrous Women, we have pocong, we have all these different kind of like well-known kind of horror tropes and characters that people are familiar with, and they can communicate an idea more effectively, than a graph, because it doesn't replace the data. It helps people kind of connect abstract information with something they already recognize. And I think that's the important distinction. So visual elements are often treated as decoration. And this is something that's if I was giving a lecture just purely on data visualization, I would end up talking about kind of chart junk and the gendered nature of kind of how chart junk is rejected, and actually the usefulness of what we might consider kind of decoration or chart junk is. But it's something that we might add after the analysis. So we produce a very simple bar chart, but actually it's kind of part of this kind of decoration is actually part of the chart itself here as well. So that's kind of they're actually part of the analysis, and that's how meaning is constructed. So every design decision matters, and hierarchy determines what people notice first. Color creates emphasis and relationships. Typography influences kind of readability and tone. Annotation provides kind of explanation and context. Layout controls pacing, sequence, helps understanding. And none of these are kind of purely aesthetic choices. They're communication choices. So communication choices always influence interpretation. And I'm sure this is something that you're learning as part of your studies as well. So when I look back across these kind of projects that I've kind of worked on myself, this kind of data storing, I don't think the most important lesson has been about visual style, because they do, kind of change, between the different ones I work with. So each of these kind of data stories, I've worked with, different illustrators. With their Continentalist have like a roster of different illustrators and designers that we work with to kind of produce these data stories. And so, yeah, oh, where have I gone from there? So, yeah, like it becomes kind of a very interesting kind of thing to kind of work with. So what I would like to offer, so data storytelling is often described. Oh, I've gone back to the wrong way. So I've lost my nice slide in my notes. Sorry, so bear with me just a second. Sorry. So really, yeah, it's been about intention. So good storytelling doesn't begin with a chart. It begins with a communication problem. So who needs to understand something? What do they need to understand? Why does it matter? Why does it matter is actually one of the most important questions of producing these data stories. Like, why does this story matter to people? Why should it matter to people? And why should people care? So once those questions become clear, the visual form kind of often reveals itself. So sometimes it is a graph, and sometimes it isn't. So graphs are still kind of a valid response. I say in the data story I had here, the chart on the left-hand side was still very kind of useful in the data storytelling process, but so was the kind of comic form on the right-hand side to communicate the data. So if communication begins before we choose a chart, could it begin even earlier, perhaps before we collect data, perhaps before we analyze it, perhaps for something much simpler, which is, paying attention, learning to notice. And so that question becomes the starting point, for the next section I want to discuss. I'm also going to look at the time to see that I'm actually doing okay time-wise. So the question, became a starting point as well for a project that I'm kind of been working on over the last kind of few years around kind of data walking. In particular, I'm going to kind of focus on a workshop I ran at Monash University a couple of months ago, which was a data walking and crafting workshop. So data walking is perhaps not a well-known kind of methodology or approach or a concept, I think, in Indonesia. And so I think I'd probably, start with like a definition or an explanation of what I might mean by, data walking. And it can be, we can approach it from a few different angles. It is kind of like the process of actually just walking. So it is a walking method, which is kind of a known kind of method in sociological approaches. There are walking interviews, there are kind of other things that we do as part of a walking method. But data walking is where, when we're walking, we might kind of collect data. So we might use, use the phone to kind of passively collect data or actively collect data. And we're actually collecting data either environmentally or on that kind of walking that we're actually doing. Also, data walking, the kind of approach that I'm looking at it as well, is using walking as a way to interrogate kind of the data infrastructure, the digital infrastructure around us in the environment. So we also use it to kind of understand with, engage with, and kind of try to see kind of like the digital in the environment, looking at the infrastructure, understanding privacy, understanding surveillance, security, these different things that kind of are found in our everyday environments. So there is kind of a body of literature around data walking. It kind of emerged from like UK and kind of like Netherlands. And so there are kind of a few books and a few websites. I think there's even a data walking website, like might be datawalking.com or something that you can kind of look at. There are also kind of apps that you can utilize that people have built, that you can use your smartphone as you're walking around and kind of engage with kind of collecting data. So there is a machine learning kind of camera based one which tags the objects as you kind of walk around. You can also do kind of image tagging, and everything, all those kind of types of things as well. A lot of people already are kind of tracking their movements already, but perhaps don't think about kind of what this actually means or how we might actually communicate, this data. So I want to kind of, quickly kind of switch to the kind of data walking and crafting workshop that I ran. So really, like, what I wanted, people in this workshop. So I ran it in the bottom left-hand corner with Joanna Amarissa, who is actually Indonesian, based in Melbourne, who does work around kind of data crafting. So she has done kind of workshops where she gets participants to engage with data and then build like a bracelet that kind of then encodes the data. And so for this, we combined kind of forces with our interests around kind of this idea of engaging with data in different ways and communicating it in different ways and collecting it in different ways to kind of co-run a workshop at Monash University kind of campus. So if storytelling doesn't begin, when we make a visualization, so you can see it in the bottom center there, that's the kind of output of the workshop, was this map that they produced. The storytelling begins before they even get to that point. So where does, data storytelling begin? So at first glance, and I think this was the confusion for a lot of the participants at the beginning of the workshop, it doesn't look like a data workshop at all. There was no laptops. There was no phones used really. There was no kind of computational kind of engagement or coding, technical kind of work in this workshop that was called, data walking and crafting. And no spreadsheets, importantly as well. I don't know how everyone feels about spreadsheets in here. So we began, by going for a walk. That's the beginning of our kind of, data storytelling process, was to take a walk. So that might sound slightly strange, and I think it is more of a kind of stranger concept in Indonesia, just because it is actually difficult sometimes to walk around in Indonesia. And wherever I've been kind of in Jakarta and other places, there isn't kind of safe spaces in terms of pavement and sidewalks and things to actually to walk. So it can be kind of a strange idea to engage this idea of walking as a form of data storytelling. So, what does walking have to do with data? For me, quite a lot, I think. So when we talk about data, we often imagine something abstract, which is like numbers, databases, spreadsheets, dashboards, like my students do with the unit I work with. So it's something that exists, on our screens. But our experience of the world, comes long before that. So we notice things, we observe patterns, we hear sounds, we smell food, we experience heat, noise, movement, congestion, rhythm of everyday life. So all of these experiences are information. They're observations, they're often the beginning of questions that become data, like my data story on the street food vendors. It came from me noticing and hearing sounds, tasting the food even that the kind of street food vendors kind of produce, and from there I developed a data story out of it. So they're often the beginning of questions that become data. So during the workshop, I asked, or to myself and Joanna asked, the participants to kind of slow down, take this kind of slow walk, to think about things that they would normally walk past. So think about movement, think about space, think about infrastructure, people, objects, conversation, textures. So rather than asking, what data, do I have? I wasn't giving them any data in this workshop. I got them to think about, what am I noticing and what can be data? And so that kind of shift, that small shift, kind of changes kind of a lot of different things here. So noticing is already an act of interpretation. So everybody produced a very different map from the same walk. I think that we had many different groups, and they took the same route around kind of the campus area, but no two people kind of noticed the same thing. Each person had a different interpretation, a different kind of observation, and a different kind of output in this map. So one participant was noticing accessibility, another was kind of paying attention to the advertising, the height of the advertising, the type of advertising. Somebody else was paying attention to trees. Others were looking at kind of surveillance cameras. And, the city itself is the same, not just the campus, but the city is the same. The stories we begin to construct are kind of different. So after the walk, we didn't immediately make kind of charts. Instead, we kind of made something. So they didn't produce charts and visualizations. They were using, washi tape, pastels, felt tips, string, leaves, other objects, working with this kind of paper and even string actually as well, to map their routes, to translate their observations, into something tangible, something they could actually communicate to people. So again, this might kind of seem unusual for a data workshop to be working with string and washi tape and leaves and other things like that. But the purpose of this was, with the crafting was to kind of slow people down, to encourage that conversation between the different groups, to kind of have experimentation, and also then to reflect on what it is that they were actually kind of producing as part of their data stories. So people, began discussing what they observe, why it matters, and it became less about producing the correct visualization. So there was no, correct output for a workshop like this. It's more about kind of exploring of making meaning together. So for me, that's a form of data storytelling because, not because we're visualizing data sets, but we're beginning to transform observation into shared understanding. Though sometimes with some of these data maps, the understanding was only in their groups, and it was a bit opaque to me trying to read some of their maps. So really kind of this workshop changes how they pay attention. I think a few of them did remark on the fact that they'd never really paid attention to the campus. They'd never really looked at it in that way when they've been walking around there. And actually from there on, they were going to pay more attention, to the environment on campus. So I'd say it's an important outcome because data literacy, isn't about reading graphs. It's about learning to notice the world kind of differently, to ask better questions, to recognize that data doesn't simply exist, waiting to be collected. It's produced through choices about what we observe, it's what we record, and what we consider important. So it's always a subjective experience. So let's maybe rethink data storytelling in a broader way. So it doesn't become with a visualization, doesn't even necessarily need to begin with data. It just potentially begins with curiosity. It begins with observation, with lived experience. And I think that's kind of important in algorithmic societies because algorithms are very good at helping us find patterns, but they're less capable of deciding what is worth paying attention to in the first place. That's still something that we need to learn to be able to do. That remains a deeply kind of human activity, learning to notice, learning to ask questions, and learning to care. So these are still things we need to cultivate ourselves, and what you would need to do as kind of communication students and potential communication experts in the future. So I would say that these are kind of the foundations of meaningful data storytelling. So once these stories are created, they don't simply enter a neutral public space. They enter environments shaped, by algorithms, and that creates another challenge for communication professionals. I think I included in here, you can see like the metrics of this kind of particular piece, 1,600 kind of likes, 17 comments, and so forth. And similarly with the street food vendor piece, it went not viral, but it did get me a kind of a bit of attention in Indonesia because it did start to spread on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and various kind of other channels. And actually, that should have been the slide I was talking about here. So really, this kind of leads to this idea that that data is encountered, sorry, not just collected. And so for me, what I've been exploring over the last few years is these emerging directions for data literacy and storytelling, which is kind of an embodied experience. It's kind of situated and it's participatory in terms of its data practices. So really, like, these three ways of thinking about data storytelling kind of come together. I like to see them kind of overlapping here, where my pedagogical practice links with my kind of practice of producing these kind of visual storytelling pieces. And potentially in that kind of practice area as well, we would talk about kind of any academic papers that I write or any kind of other pieces that kind of intersect with there. And then walking, which would perhaps be more of this kind of embodied, situated participatory practice with these kind of workshops. So not just walking, but other forms of kind of engaging with data kind of in the environment through noticing and engaging with it. So I have a few other things to kind of go through there as well, but throughout this talk, I've argued that data storytelling is a communication practice. I've suggested that it begins with people rather than data sets. So the visual form should emerge from communication goals rather than default chart types. And that meaningful storytelling begins long before we make a graph through observation, curiosity, and lived experience. So these stories don't exist in isolation. They circulate through algorithmic systems. So one of the things that I did kind of hint at the beginning here, and this is something that I'm curious about, and I would say that like I'm not fully aware of everything that kind of goes on with kind of the AI kind of scene, but AI can generate charts but can it generate understanding? And I think this is going back to this idea of what I'm talking about, this idea of encountering data and just kind of collecting it, and what happens when we kind of automate, this kind of process. So there is an increasing amount of examples of AI tools being used to build, data visualizations. And so AI is increasingly kind of automating chart production, dashboard creation, summarization, and descriptive analysis. On the right-hand side is just a screenshot from LinkedIn. So Elijah Mikes is kind of a well-known kind of data visualization expert, as he says in his LinkedIn kind of handle. But he was using Codex to kind of make this visualization in the bottom right here. He's automating this process, plugging it into existing visualization kind of like programming languages to kind of produce this kind of visual artifact. But I would say, in this kind of process, that even though AI can, increasingly automate chart production, dashboard creation, etc., it does not automatically kind of produce kind of context, judgment, narrative, kind of ethics, audience awareness, or cultural understanding. They're still things that require kind of that human kind of process. Like when I'm talking about all of these different things here about that kind of process of being engaged with that data collection. And this kind of, I want to link as well here a little bit to who controls what we see. And I think I'd also talk about kind of the issues that we face as, if anybody's interested in digital methods and using kind of data as a form of kind of data storytelling, is in this control in terms of what we see. There's also a control over what we access. So when I was kind of doing my initial kind of work in this kind of area, in 2017, I attended the Digital Methods Summer School. If anybody's interested in, this kind of form of data storytelling and engaging with digital methods in this way, the Amsterdam Digital Methods Summer School and Winter School is a very good thing to attend. You do actually get, I think, 6 credits for participating in a 2-week kind of like course as well. But when I was working on it in 2017 and even in my master's 2015, 2016, it was very easy to get data. There were so many tools that you could actually use to kind of access Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all these different kind of sites. You had very easy access through kind of API and through other forms of kind of scraping to kind of access data. So in 2017, the project I worked on scraped lots of data from Facebook, from particular kind of Facebook groups, using NetViz, this tool that now doesn't work because Meta have kind of closed off, the access to their data. And similarly as well, it's kind of becoming increasingly difficult to get data from Instagram and Twitter with X. A few years ago, I was able to get kind of free access to all Twitter data through an academic kind of affiliation. And now I think it costs $10,000 a month to access, their data through API access. So these barriers also exist, and this control exists on the back end of research as well. So I think there are papers that are written about kind of how we're actually potentially living in a post-API kind of environment as well in academia. So, in terms of who controls what we see, we have this kind of AI kind of automation in terms of maybe what's kind of produced. But in terms of the way that the data stories that we encounter, or the types of data we encounter, or the way that we encounter any of these types of things here, is shaped by platform. So platforms shape visibility. Social media feeds are curated by algorithms. We don't always fully understand kind of necessarily how these algorithms actually work. There is an element of them being kind of like a black box. Search engines kind of rank information, recommendation systems decide what gains attention, and this visibility kind of influence understanding because the stories people encounter shape what they think is important, and the algorithms are shaping what they can encounter and therefore shapes kind of what they think is important. So not every data story has the same opportunity to reach an audience. So communication professionals need to think, beyond design. It's not enough to make a compelling visualization. We also need to consider, where it will appear, who will see it, and how it will be interpreted. So I'll try and like finish a little bit with, because I think with time-wise I should finish soon, is to talk about kind of data storytelling, rather than thinking about data storytelling as a collection of techniques. I want to encourage us to think about it as a set of communication principles. And the first is to think of to know your audience. These are perhaps quite simple ones, but these are always the ones that I kind of use when I'm thinking about my kind of practice. So know your audience, and this is to think about lived experience as well. So like whether students analyzing YouTube comments or participants walking through a neighborhood, it begins by also by paying attention to the world around you. So communication meaning, not just information, design with context, so not just numbers. So data only becomes meaningful when people understand where it comes from, what it represents, and why it matters. Transparency, so be transparent about uncertainty. So where there is any uncertainty in the data, any kind of like choices that you make. So quite often, I will include in my methodology, I'll explain exactly the steps I took in the data cleaning processes or the subjective kind of choices I made to omit or include or delete or change the data. And I made the students kind of do that in my unit too. Create opportunities for participation where possible. So that's, by asking questions in the data story or including people in the actual data storytelling process. And then kind of finally here as well, reflect on what and who remains invisible in this data storytelling process. So whose kind of labor, whose work, whose kind of like labor is kind of included, not included, what viewpoints are included, and which ones kind of remain visible. So as I finish, I'd like to return to the question I posed at the beginning. So if data has become, one of the dominant languages of everyday life, what is the role of communication professionals? I don't think our role is simply to create better charts, and it's not simply to master the latest technologies. Our role is to help people make sense of increasingly complex world, to translate information into understanding, to connect data with lived experience, and to design stories that help people think, not just consume. So data never speaks for itself, and visualizations don't speak for themselves either. So people design stories, and increasingly algorithms shape which stories we encounter. So the challenge for all of us is to ensure that these stories remain thoughtful, ethical, and deeply human. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank
And
you
hopefully
so
I'm
much.
on time as well.
Yes, it's okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Ridley. It's really interesting because, like you said before, a student often begin to believe that data analysis is always about statistics, it's always about software that they use. And maybe it's not just your student, but my student also
Mm,
think of that because maybe 5 out of 10 they will do the topic of their thesis is always about analysis sentiment, analysis of
yeah.
comment, analysis of engagement, and so on. Thank you so much, Dr. Ridley, for the insight. Yeah, maybe there's a lot of our students here also that will be uh, valuable insight for their research in the next time. Maybe I agree with you. Maybe the data in Indonesia, maybe we have. We also have a platform that we can get a fresh data. Maybe almost every week. Called Drone Amprit. Maybe you know.
Which one, sorry?
Drone Amprit
Do
in
I know?
Yogyakarta.
Oh, yeah.
That platform, we can get data every
Yeah.
week about analysis comment in social media,
Oh,
analysis
yeah.
sentiment in X, and so on. So our student maybe it's very easy for them to get the data
Yeah.
as well. Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Ridley. Maybe now we will, I believe, okay. There's a question. Wait a minute. I will.
I think there's some
Okay.
questions in the chat, I think. Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Ridley. From Mr. Arif Budi Prasetya. I have a question regarding your explanation. If data stories can shift from graphics to narrative form like comics, are we expanding meaning or simply making data more consumable commodities as Christian Fudge suggests? And in doing so, are we still telling stories or optimizing them for attention and visibility? This, Dr. Lily, this is the really interesting question. You might answer the question first.
I think that's a yeah, that's a good kind of question. Like I think as we have, as I say, we're kind of competing in these kind of algorithmic and environments, as I said in my talk, that we want to make things that are visually interesting to kind of capture that attention. And I think, as you say, like I do take issue with the idea of kind of the, production and consumption kind of model that data visualization is just a consumable commodity. I definitely do have a kind of issue around kind of that. Um, but I think like it depends on whether it's still actually communicating the data in an accurate way. I think there's kind of always going to be, I guess, trade-offs in the way that you communicate something. But if the data comic is still actually communicating the meaning or the data in an accurate way, still, I think accuracy is kind of important. I think you're avoiding the main things I would look at it from is around, in terms of ethics and things like that, that it's not going to be something that's subverting the data. Um,
Mm.
I think it's also as well like your intention and your kind of aim for what is that you actually want to communicate, because we have different outputs that we might want from visualizations. This is something that came into my PhD, where I was thinking about kind of what the goal of a visualization is as well. Like you have many different kind of ways of evaluating this kind of successful outcome of visualization. So thinking my PhD, you might want to just provoke people to think about a topic more. Sometimes you want people to actually be able to read the data and make a decision based on it. So like sometimes that's why you have the simple charts that are very clearly labeled in finance and other areas. You want to see the charts going up or down. That you want to see a very easy trend to know if actually we're losing money, we're making money, or this kind of or seeing the data in response to an advertisement campaign. This is like where as communication things as well, if we're working in marketing, we have a marketing campaign and we collect data on views and engagement or sales and these different things to actually show whether what we did has had an impact. Um, so in terms of like optimizing them for attention and visibility, there's definitely like an interesting study to kind of do on data storytelling practices in Instagram, probably on that, in terms of the way that some perhaps do employ more viral or sensationalist kind of like framing. And I think that's more where I kind of come at it. And I guess like, yeah, like expanding meaning. We talk about kind of barrier to access, about the way that different people engage with visualizations, and it is around, I guess, getting attention without kind of losing kind of the meaning, I guess. But it's a very interesting one to kind of think about because I also come, as I say, I come from an animation background, so like I'm quite like data comics feel like natural for me as well as a potentially a way of kind of exploring data visualization to kind of make it kind of visually interesting, I guess, as long as it's not hiding meaning, if that makes sense.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. Maybe as long as the story honest about the data, maybe yeah, the data transparent about uncertainty, but
Yeah,
not just about virality. Maybe we
yeah.
are still can telling a story and not just optimizing it. Okay, we move to the second question from Alto Belly. How do you approach data storytelling and how do you utilize that data? What media do you use, or is there a specific application you employ? Okay.
Yeah, there's a few questions in there as well, I guess. Like with this, like my approach to data storytelling, as I say, it starts from a point of curiosity more than anything, like something that feels interesting. So I have lots of notebooks where I just write stuff down all the time, anything I notice or find interesting, and just write down a particular thing that I want to explore and just see if there's actually something kind of interesting in there. So quite, yeah, you can work with existing data sets. I tend to create my own data sets most of the time. Um, like for example, the piece I did a few years ago, I think you can find it. I think the piece is called "Our Data Analytics: The New YouTube Skills and Something Video." I wrote about the fact that like I was noticing a few years ago that football fans were engaging a lot more with data when talking about potential football, signings of players and things, um, rather than what it used to be where people would share like a skills video of that player. They were actually instead sharing this data that showed their XG, that showed all this different kind of metrics of what makes a good footballer. And so it just started from a weird idea, and they started just from this idea, and I started to then explore the data. I pitched the idea to this kind of website. And then when it got approved, I collected the data. And I didn't know what was in the data, I have to admit. Like I still kind of wasn't sure. And I just scraped using I used Postman. So I used different tools, if that's also the question as well. So I can, and when we talk as well, as you say, like, your students as well, will want to kind of learn some of these kind of like technical tools. And it is important. I always say it is important to know these tools. It is important to learn these techniques. Like I do know how to use all these things. I can code. Like I know some Python and I know like how to do some JavaScript and these are the things as well. It is important to kind of have those skills because you also need to understand how these approaches structure the data, that the algorithms built into sentiment analysis as well. So these are models that make decisions themselves. So this understanding kind of needs to be there of the technical tools. But sometimes I use kind of what I would consider more like wizard or off the shelf tools sometimes. So like you can use Flourish, Data Wrapper, and I can use Postman, which kind of does a bit of the work for you for the kind of like API access. But also I'll use kind of Python. I'll also kind of use like bespoke stuff. I'll use Illustrator. I can use all of these different things to make them from scratch. It depends on the project sometimes as well, like how I want to kind of go about this kind of process. Because I do enjoy both approaches. I think a student was kind of confused that I enjoyed, doing this kind of work, that actually I took enjoyment from doing data analysis. I enjoyed writing some scripts to clean data. I enjoyed kind of doing this. So it varies from project to project. So I think there is not always a right way, but I think you should always know what using particular tools might do to the data process or the visualization process, because each of these tools have their inbuilt kind of biases or models of ways of actually structuring it. And so as long as you're understanding kind of what the tools are doing, you should be kind of fine. But yeah, really, not a specific application. I use lots of different stuff, I think. So I would recommend kind of exploring different ones and trying stuff out, because each have their kind of usefulness in terms of like how customizable they can be.
Okay, there's no a specific application that you use. Yeah, we maybe you still do the traditional way, writing. I'm impressed. Maybe
Yeah.
your student is
And I've been using
impressed.
like specific tools. So like if anybody does a sentiment analysis, I was using Indobert recently because I was curious to kind of use the
Ah,
Indonesian kind of language sentiment analysis
okay.
and did a bit of experimentation, but that was in Python.
Yeah.
Whilst in class we used Communalytic, which is like a off-the-shelf tool that kind of you drop the data and it does it for you. So as I say, like I use two approaches. So I can either use this tool that does the work for you, or I'll use a model like Indobert to try and explore and kind of like find out a little bit more on specific things.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. Really, thank you so much. Okay, another question from Naufal Riyadi. Good morning. Pleasure to having you here. I've only been studying visual design communication and data visualization deeply for about a month. So I still consider myself quite early in this kind of thing. I
Mm.
would like to ask your perspective about, are simple visual design is better than complex design like mid-20 era, I suppose, for communicating data or data storytelling. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, that would, I guess, like if you're talking about kind of the um, simple visual designs, it's kind of looking at things like Tufty, and things like talking about the idea of data ink ratio and this kind of use of white space and not kind of creating too complex visualizations and this is like, I think as I hinted at a little bit in my what I talked about a minute ago, but it depends on the purpose of the visualization. I think like my PhD kind of looked at this, that I was looking at kind of like how do you judge what a successful outcome is for a data visualization or a data kind of product. And the answer really is it depends. It depends on your audience. It depends on the purpose. Um, you can like sometimes these simple visual designs are better. It might be better for like your manager if you're working in a company because they want to just quickly take the data. Like you'll want something where like the decisions have to be made quite quickly. Then simple visual design is better. Like if you're working with dashboards, with quickly updating data as well. You don't want something kind of too complex because you need to be able to read it quickly, make quick decisions based upon the data. So I think it depends on the context. And it probably does link a little bit to I don't know if it's Arif kind of question there about
Yeah.
Christian Fuchs kind of thing around consumable commodities. Sometimes they do work. Like there is, it's all around kind of context and audience. Um, in terms of who you're producing for, because producing a nice visual infographic can be fun to engage with. It can be like an enjoyable process. I don't have the book with me here, but I have like a infographics book in my office. And it can be nice to kind of explore. Like you think about it, like oh, if Where's Wally is kind of popular here as well. Like that's kind of the process of looking at an image and finding something in an image can also be an enjoyable process and sometimes what you want people to do. And sometimes you want people to just extract the information in a couple of seconds. And they're both kind of valid approaches, I think. It just depends always on context and purpose and audience, I think.
Yeah. Like you said before, it's always about context. So it's always depend on your context and the interpretation, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Ridley, maybe this is the last question
Yeah.
for today's session from Ibu Megasari Norfatanti. You mentioned that data is dominant language in our everyday life. Like
Mm.
what moderator said, that our students often struggle to find a thesis
Mhm.
topic. How can they learn to read digital data, not simply follow trending topics, but more to identify research problems that are academically meaningful and socially relevant? Could you suggest a simple process for turning patterns, change, or anomalies in data into a feasible undergraduate research question? Thank you.
I actually kind of did a
Okay.
talk for journal coders on this kind of topic almost like I think last year or maybe the year before, where I talked about kind of how almost I came up with my ideas. And I think it is, as I say, like I think maybe as well it's because the issue is, I think as the question is that data is a dominant language in everyday lives, is that it's become so backgrounded or to our lives that it's just kind of happening around us that we don't necessarily question, what's kind of going on. We don't interrogate this data, we don't question this data. Like I can open my phone now and I could very easily go into a dashboard that presents the data. I have a fitness kind of tracking app in here as well that I record when I'm doing things. There's also kind of apps, the weather app I can open here. I can open lots of different kind of apps that are kind of working with data. And I imagine lots of people watching me right now probably have an Apple Watch on their wrist as well, which will present to you kind of different data. If you kind of swipe through that, you can very easily switch to a mode that's perhaps giving you your heart rate and other things like that these things are kind of passively recording kind of all the time. And in terms of like learning to read digital data, I think you could actually start with like I think maybe an activity I might make people do is like keep a data diary. Could be something actually each day. You kind of keep a note of every time you encounter data, maybe. And I think that might make you think about kind of this kind of process of how you're always kind of tracking data or doing something. And I did capturing data every kind of hour. Another thing can be to actually challenge yourself to turn something into data. So if anybody knows the Dear Data, I don't think I have the book here. Again, it's in my office, unfortunately. Oh, actually, I do have something here, but it might not show up because I am, obviously using the background. But like did
Oh, tidak, aku kelempar.
what that data. Oh, I think there's an issue with the madness thing there. Everybody can hear me okay still? Yeah, okay. Like kind of like thinking about the socially relevant things, we can start to think about topics around kind of surveillance and control and thinking about the impact that these kind of this data has in our lives. So I think like I would be interested as well, like if anybody has like I guess I could give you lots of different topics. Maybe actually I can speak about this to people afterwards and give you ideas. But like for example, when you're using like a sleep tracking app, the sleep tracking app in the morning will tell you whether you had a good night's sleep, a bad night's sleep, or a poor night's sleep. And it's kind of telling you what your sleep is. So the question I think was to say, keep a data diary. Whenever you kind of encounter data, make a note of what that data is telling you and actually how it makes you feel almost as well. Like you wake up in the morning, it says you had a poor night's sleep, you probably then just think, I had a poor night's sleep, I'm gonna have a terrible day. But if you didn't encounter that data, if you weren't told that data, would it kind of mean that you wouldn't kind of have a bad day? I think sometimes this encountering with data as well can change these things. And the difference between like looking at weather app, looking at kind of pollution apps. And I think it is that taking that backward step because we're so involved with data. I think taking a backward step is the helpful thing to do and think about kind of the impact that data is having on everybody's life. So take a step back and keep a data diary for a day. I think it's a suggestion to everybody. Just like maybe every hour or every time you use your phone or something, make a note of what data you're encountering and then actually how it makes you feel or if it's making you make a decision or if it's actually doing something to you, and then reflect back on that to see actually whether there is some interesting question in it.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Really. Maybe one thing that I take notes from your presentation, it's also about noticing the data, maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
So our student may be not just about searching a data, but how they will design the data, visualization, and so on.
Yeah, because you can start
Oh,
off with an idea and then find the data later. So for the street food vendor one, I did actually use existing open data format to look at informal workers, to look at kind of the mobile phone subscription. So I can still go and find data, but it started off with me noticing and thinking about something.
yeah. That's why you always write down your.
Yeah, I have I have 4 different notebooks that I keep on me, all different
Oh,
they all have different purposes for my notes.
okay. I really impressed for that. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Ridley. I'm afraid that our time is already up. Thank you so much. Maybe perhaps before we close, could you share maybe a few things for your closing remarks about data storytelling and visualization? We got love from Dr. Aran, everybody.
Yeah.
Maybe you have something for your closing remarks.
So I think, yeah, I think my main thing it would be to say is, again, as I just said, is to just to try to notice things. I think that's the hopefully the takeaway that I want in here is to kind of reflect on the impact that data has, to think about kind of your choices in collecting data. And actually, probably another activity I would have is to say not just the data diary, but also to try and think about random data sets that you can make in your daytime. So look, as I say, everybody look up their data and see if you can make your data postcard from an activity you're doing your day. So I think I would challenge people just to kind of like try and create kind of a data set from just their daily life, try and notice some things and actually kind of reflect on how data is impacting on their life.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Ridley. Maybe I will summarize a little thing that
Yep.
Dr. Ridley, everyone, remind us that every data set require interpretation, every visualization reflects a decision, and every story reflects value. Data never simply speak for itself, like Dr. Ridley said before. Dr. Ridley also, the interesting one is he left with a crucial provocation, maybe. In the algorithmic era, maybe AI can generate charts, context, judgment, or narrative, but the cultural understanding, it's always about our responsibility and ethic. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Ridley. Once again, maybe before we wrap up our first session, let's us take a virtual group photo first. Maybe you familiar with this too. Okay.
Yeah, very familiar.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm ready to.
okay, wait a minute. Okay. Okay, everyone, you can stand by and on your camera. Okay. 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 1, 2, 3. Okay. Dr. Alan, you may do the C sign of our university. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay. Once again, thank you so much, Masuk. Di mic dihidupin aja, Ki. Nggak usah kamera, nggak apa-apa. Okay, sorry, there was a technical issue just now. Before we move on to the next keynote speaker, we would once again like to thank you Aspikom Jawa Timur and our four co-host university, Magister Ilmu Komunikasi Universitas Brawijaya, Ilmu Komunikasi Universitas Tribuana Tunggadewi, Ilmu Komunikasi Universitas Atmajaya, dan Magister Media dan Komunikasi UIN Sunan Kalijaga Yogyakarta. And last but not least, our sponsor, Pop Survey by Populix. Pop Survey by Populix is an online survey platform that helps students, researchers, and business practitioners find verified respondents quickly, affordably, and easily. So as a researcher, this will make it much easier for us to collect data in a more structured way. Okay, all right, everyone. That concludes the panel session with our first keynote speaker. And it seems our second keynote speaker has also joined us here, Professor Yuyun. Yeah, I believe she has joined us here. Okay, before we move on to our second keynote speaker, Professor Yuyun Wahyu Izati Surya from Universitas Airlangga, let's take a short break and watch a brief profile of our second keynote speaker.
As we arrive at the closing keynotes of ICODES 2026, it is now our privilege to introduce Professor Yuyun Wahyu Izati Surya. She is a professor in the Communication Department, Universitas Airlangga. Her research focuses on digital media, multiculturalism, social activism, and visual culture. Recently, she has published international articles about Papuan culture and digital tourism in Indonesia.
Sorry. Okay, I would like now to invite our last but not least keynote speaker, Professor Yuyun Wahyu Izati Surya from Universitas Airlangga. Welcome on screen, Prof. Yuyun.
Thank you,
Hi.
Bu Ratna. Hi, everybody. Hope everyone is okay.
Yeah. How are you today, Professor Yuyun?
Alhamdulillah, I'm good.
Okay. I heard that you are in Malaysia right now.
I am right now. I'm
Yeah.
in the middle of Terengganu. They say that it's the happiest area in Malaysia. So
Malaysia.
hopefully, like it kind of like spread the, happiness around us today too.
I read about that also. Thank you so much, Prof. Yuyun, for making time to join with us today in
You're
the final
welcome.
session on the last day of ICODES 2026. So everyone, Prof. Yuyun will bring a rich perspective on the intersection of technology, culture, and ethics. That today she will speaking on multicultural human-machine communication, right, Prof. Yuyun? Okay,
Right.
no, she will take us on a journey from the historical and even maybe mythical origin about of how we imagine intelligent machine through the geopolitical roots of AI. And we'll talk about the challenge of algorithm, filter bubbles, and also echo chamber that I think everyone here may be familiar with that one.
Exactly.
So Yeah, Prof. Yuyun, you have around 50 minutes to deliver your presentation, and afterward there will be a Q&A session in the end of your session that I will read out for you. So you have 50 minutes from now. Prof. Yuyun, the virtual room is yours.
Thank you very much. So, good morning, everyone, and maybe good afternoon and good evening for those who is outside Indonesia. First of all, I would like to send my highest appreciation to the conference committee who invite me to this event. It's very interesting conference theme, and of course, it is relevant to current issues. We have lots of comprehensive topics, and of course, various panels and presenters. As we all know that digital media, particularly artificial intelligence nowadays, has always been a sexy topic to be again for because it's rapid development, and of course, as a social science scholar, the way the society respond to and affected by this technology has also intriguing topic to be discussed. I am again honored to be part of this conference, and I really believe that throughout these 2 days online event, there'll be bunch areas to be explored and discussed. So, Bismillah, I will share my PowerPoint.
You can. Okay.
All right, so everyone already seen it, right?
Yeah.
I would like to present the multicultural perspective regarding the human-machine communication. Basically, I would like to add a question mark, like 3 question marks, whether the human-machine communication or the relationship between human and artificial intelligence, for instance, in particular, is multicultural in a way that they kind of like acknowledging the every single groups in a society. But let's go through this conversation, this discussion by starting the myth surround the technology itself. Um, I kind of like pointing out the what Neil Postman said about the relations between human and technology. As early as 1990s, Postman observed how human is obsessed with technology. So basically, technology in what wider definition is part of the society, every single stage of the society, and that's how Neil Postman observed how we actually obsess with that technology. Since the dawn of the technology development, the way humans understand machine has been inextricably linked to stories, myth, and imagination. Narratives serve as interpretive framework that help humans make sense of complex and abstract concepts. In this context, truth is of course determined not only by empirical facts or data, but also by the strength of a narrative in fostering coherence and emotional resonance with society. This align with the characteristic of course, what we know as the post-truth era, where persuasive narrative often carry more weight than accurate data. This is how myth is created. Like any other myths, technology is also perceived by the society. It is perceived as intelligent and neutral entity. Let's see how intelligent and neutral the technology is. Um, I understand that neutral is related to the understanding that technology is a value-free object and only become good or bad depending on how human use them. So it's similar to, the knife, the metaphor of the knife somehow has a good way, in positive way, because we use it to cut meat, to cut bread, etc. But also it can be our useful weapon when our negative aura kind of like ask us to do something bad, like kill people, etc. Um, of course, in reality, technology is never neutral. It encodes human choices, shapes social power, and reflects the biases of its creator. Believing that technology is neutral Let's creator and companies avoid ethical responsibility for the real world harm their products cause. People stop questioning the human choices and power dynamic behind them. That's the neutrality of the technology. That's what they said. What about the intelligent aspect that they say related to technology? The myth of intelligent technology is false belief that machine possess real understanding, consciousness, or independent thought. Rather than just processing data through human-made rules, we call output intelligent when it mimics us. And believing machine are smart makes us doubt our own minds. Don't forget that we are the most perfect creation of God. So humans is of course in a higher level, the highest level in it compared to the technology. Um, let's see and look back to the historical of the invention of digital technology, and we can reflect whether it is quote unquote intelligent and quote unquote neutral. Digital technology and the internet in particular have served the primary drivers of AI research since 1950s. And it was created by the US Department of Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, or DARPA. And the logic, of course, because it is the defense agency, employed the logic employed was, of course, military in nature. We heard about target, surveillance, and also anomaly detection. These technologies are, of course, a geopolitical instrument. Within this context, I guess digital technology, particularly AI, cannot be separated from the power structures in which it is embedded. The data in AI system is not neutral or reflection of reality, but rather the product of processes of extraction, selection, and classification. In other words, what ultimately emerges as fact or truth within digital system has in reality undergone a process of social and political construction. As you may see in this diagram, over the last 57 years, so we kind of like, engage a lot for the last 50, over the last 50 years. Digital technology has evolved since its initial public introduction in 1983, marked by the invention of the what we call TCP/IP, the Transmission Control Protocol and Internet Protocol, followed by the World Wide Web in 1991 and social networking sites in 2004. And in 2022, we acknowledge as the era of AI or algorithm. This 57-year evolution has resulted in 5.5 billion internet users, 2 billion websites, and a volume of over 500 billion emails per day. Human machine interaction has become the main issue in the EA era. As you see all in this diagram, it has four development stages. And I guess nowadays we are already in the fourth stages, that is the agentic system. But let's see and review the early stage, the first stage that is start in 1990s to 2005. Human interaction with AI started when people find information through rank result. Recommendations start shaping attention, and back-end automation where some spam detection runs quietly in the background. This is the early digital foundation. The next step in 2006 until 2019 is marked with the ubiquity of the AI as assistant in daily life. We know Siri, etc. Conversational system with stronger vision, speech, and also translation. The third stage is the generative collaboration where AI becomes daily cognitive tools as well as co-creation tools. It acknowledges the bias and the misinformation because of the user's over-reliance to AI. The last stage is called the agentic system era in which AI plans, and execute multi-step tasks. I guess I see lots of students here, and of course, you are all aware of the importance of the AI in making the assignments, etc. Humans set goals, but systems run workflows. And there is a governance, of course, question regarding control, accountability, and safety. Thus, it can be said that AI in the beginning is a product, a useful tool aimed at a better service and, of course, fewer errors. And then AI becomes infrastructure, shaping what is visible and nudging behavior for millions. It has power as well. From this point, we knew that the power is of course asymmetrical, that AI know far more than its users because users have limited visibility and limited recourse. Thus, there is manipulation and quiet dependency. And this is where we step into the concept of algorithms within the context of what Zuboff said as surveillance capitalism. Digital technology corporations commodify the personal data of digital users. Digital technology-based media is a political economy entity, and so it represents a form of Marx's classical capitalist revivalism. While Zuboff characterizes traditional capitalism as Dracula that drains the lifeblood of labor, digital capitalism, represented by social media, drains every aspect of human life and experience. We kind of like familiar with the term doom scroll, etc. Social media algorithms are technical procedures and AI-driven computational processes that curate and personalize content. This personalization aims to identify content relevance to a user's interest by analyzing the browsing behavior. The algorithm seeks to maximize the user engagement with available content. On one hand, these algorithms benefits user by automatically delivering information relevant to their needs and desire, but on the other hand, they compel users to continuously consume similar content, thereby reinforcing existing belief. Pariser explains how algorithmic personalization in search engines and social media limits the diversity of information users receive. This phenomena is known as filter bubbles. Of course, we are all familiar with that. A concept describing how users are effectively prevented from encountering diverse perspective on event, a situation that amplifies emotions and exacerbates polarization. I guess I would like to relate to the multiculturalism as the ideology as well as the things that we need to kind of like put in ourselves as the belief to react or to respond to the artificial intelligence nowadays. Algorithms that filter content based on search history and users' preferences thus have the ability to dictate the information that reaches application on digital devices and it's consumed by social media users. Consequently, individuals are exposed only to opinion or information that reinforce their own beliefs. This is known as the echo chamber, a term describing a digital environment where individuals interact solely with like-minded people, thereby continuously reinforcing their existing beliefs. And of course, the combination of these factors has profound impact on the landscape of digital media usage. Both contribute to social and ideological polarization, as users are rarely exposed to alternative viewpoints. This creates a state of intellectual isolation where social media users or digital media users in general are merely reinforced in and validated for their existing perspective or event. Although the volume of information received is virtually limitless, algorithmic dominance prevents user from encountering alternative views, foster biases, and steers them away from objective critical thinking, and of course, it effectively isolates them from diverse perspective while rendering them vulnerable to disinformation and hoaxes. Filter bubble, echo chambers, polarization, and other work from algorithm bias and discrimination happen in every single process in AI system. As you can see in this picture, the discrimination shows up from the data gathering, like who is represented and who is missing. And of course, in the perspective of multiculturalism that I explained later on, of course, the minority group that is missing that or underrepresented. It also showing up in model, in policy, up to the delivery and outcome. I learned from the past historical data that this lock past social inequalities and human prejudices into automated system. For instance, AI often misidentify people with darker skin tones more frequently because of poor representation. Darker skin, kind of like part of the minority, as you can say. Automated resume screening tools have historically penalized female candidates because they were trained on data from past hiring trends that favor men. The latest and clear example of discrimination of the AI system, as we can see, is the event happened in Canggu. I guess all of you have already aware that several days ago in Canggu, Bali, an event went viral because of the exclusion to participate of the Indonesians locals in the one event organized by the expatriate in Canggu, Bali. The organizer, in its press release, blamed on the digital system and points out errors in the automated approval process that incorrectly rejected Indonesian participants. This event is the simple example of how easy it is to detect discrimination made by the so-called automated process, even though, of course, we need to understand that there are other social, cultural, political contexts, as the previous keynote speaker said, that the context is very important. But I kind of like get rid of that social, political context surrounded the event. Um, we know what happened in Bali. There are lots of, um, what kind of like a friction about the role of the expatriate, the role of the lots of, overseas tourists, etc. And of course, we need to also consider the Indonesian context in general, socio cultural, political context. At this point, I think we can now connect the interplay between the human-machine interaction and multiculturalism. Uh, what is multiculturalism? In short and in a simple way, multiculturalism emphasizes non-bias and non-discrimination concept in managing diverse socio-cultural configuration. What is the definition of multiculturalism? It is a contemporary ideological movement because the ism in the last part of that concept that promote the positive concept of cultural pluralism and is designed to extend equality throughout all levels of human endeavors. It is an ideology of others, they said, that embodies the contribution of different groups and is not a tool by which some exercise domination over others. The main principle of multiculturalism is accommodating diversity, that is, ensure interconnectedness without loss of the constituent units in the process. Its main goal is not the promotion of minority per se, but the creation of society in which diversity is recognized as a legitimate and integral component. Thus, multiculturalism basic concepts are recognition, equality, and free or non-domination. This is in line with UNESCO recommendation on the ethic of AI in 2021, which emphasizes fairness, inclusion, and non-discrimination for the use of AI in everyday life. It is based on the Stanford Ethic Toolkits that comes up with the concept of autonomy, dignity, and trust. It is a practical framework designed to help professionals and academics guide ethical decision and put values into action, including issues related to artificial intelligence. Human autonomy focuses on ensuring AI systems do not reduce human control or unfairly discriminate. Transparency and privacy emphasizing on tackling opaque decision-making processes and protecting personal user data. And accountability is related to assigning responsibility when automated systems make errors or reinforce systemic biases. The impact of digital media algorithm can be mitigated, of course, through the practice of what I so-called algorithmic hygiene, specifically by limiting daily screen time, utilizing alternative information sources to gain more diverse perspective and insights. Furthermore, it is time for digital media users to enhance their critical digital literacy, moving beyond mere functional digital literacy. Critical digital literacy positions social media users as active gatekeeping. The media literacy in digital age must transcend technical skills alone. It must also encompass the ability to understand the politics of representation, algorithmic bias, and the attention economy that underpin the operation of digital platforms. The ability to understand politics of representation and algorithmic bias is significant in this AI era, given the growing sophistication of technology and their free accessibility to users. AI-driven digital technologies such as face swapping or voice cloning can alter faces and voices to produce audiovisual content that is fake yet appears authentic. Data show that misinformation and disinformation spread 6 times faster than factual contents. And all of the netizen, as I observe in Indonesia, believe more in that disinformation or misinformation so long as it is viral. The greatest threat posed by digital technology usage is the erosion of respect for the differences and social diversity. This is what I kind of like emphasizes that the human-machine interaction needs to emphasizes on the digital multicultural literacy. Therefore, it is highly significant for the users to have multicultural literacy. Multicultural digital literacy entails the knowledge, understanding, and awareness of the importance of respecting differences and diversity, thereby avoiding stereotyping during digital interaction and countering the dominance of the algorithm bias. In addition to algorithm hygiene, I adopt the recommendation from the UNESCO regarding how we avoid and manage biases and discrimination of AI. The UNESCO call it the humanization of the AI. One, AI should engage the whole persons, not just data points. Humans' decisions are relational but not isolated. We also need to emphasize on ethical judgment based on reflection, empathy, and context. And lastly, AI should strengthen human agency and not replace it. AI ethics put human rights first. It guarantees that AI systems respect international human right law and fundamental freedom and human dignity, maintain ultimate human control and responsibility over high impact algorithmic decision, and prevent cultural homogenization by supporting, for instance, gender equality, and demand explainable AI models to reduce algorithmic bias and discrimination. This can be done through explicitly ban mass surveillance application that invade human privacy and establishes competency framework for teachers, students, and judicial operator to navigate generative tools responsibility. And I quote what the meaning of the Ubuntu, I am because we are. I guess it offers relational users for AI ethics, reminding us that dignity is life through human connection, but not isolation. I think I would like to end this presentation now and open up for more rooms for discussion and question and answer. Thank you very much. I'll give back the floor to Bu Ratnadan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Yun, for the insightful material from you. Maybe to briefly recap what we've just heard, Prof. Yun invited us to move beyond viewing AI as a purely neutral or purely intelligent entity, reminding us that our relationship with technology has always been shaped by myth, narrative, and also historically, right, Prof. Yun? Okay. Maybe Prof. Yuyun also walk us through the very real communicative risk of our the algorithm environment. Nowadays, we will always get the filter bubbles, echo chamber, and also the polarization as well. Okay, Prof. Yuyun, before we move to the question from our participant, if you may, I will ask a question first. Between
Sure.
the recognition, equality, and non-domination or free that you said before, which one do you think is the hardest for AI system to actually achieve today?
I think the recognition, I guess, like we need to realize that AI or digital media in general is just only tools. We cannot really control by them. And we are the one who decide what is good, what is better, what is best for us. That's the thing that we need to understand. Reliance on AI, I guess, what you call need to consider a lot of things. That's why I do believe that and what acknowledging the human rights, like like everyone needs to have entitled for the right information. Everyone needs to avoid stereotype. Everyone needs to be represented fairly, like every single social groups in society. Of course, it is not easy task to do because as we know it, like as old as the traditional media like radio, TV, television, and also what a newspaper.
Yes.
They are all a business entity and business as usual. They always try to put in their priority the profits. So somehow this neglects the fact that they are part of the what system, a democratic system that needs to be voiced out every single elements of the society. But in business logic, of course, they need to have or to expose those who have a more economic potentials than those who have not have economic potential. So I guess this is the thing that we need to understand. Do not rely on media, let alone what the artificial intelligence or digital media, because as we know it, it is a business as usual. It is a business. They have the owner is kind of like also try to find out profits, and what they sell is not the product but somehow is the data, because that's what the algorithmic do, right? Like they kind of like observe the way we engage with the digital media. They kind of like map it, and then they sell it to particular entities like advertiser or lots of fast-moving consumer goods, so that they can identify um, what does netizen needs in terms of they put it as the consumer, not really the netizen that have the rights of the good information, etc. So answering your question, Buratna, of course, recognition is the first thing needs to
Okay.
be put. Thank you.
It's maybe it's our homework also uh,
Exactly.
to tell our student also for their research for the thesis maybe and so on. Okay, Prof. Yuyun, let's open the chat box. Okay, I
Yes.
will read out for you. We started with Alto Belli, Bapak Alto Belli. You state that technology is essentially value neutral. Does this mean that any value created by technology platform is the product of human agency? Does it imply that humans are the agents who determine the values embraced and conveyed by technology, including those related to gender, political current, and so forth? Does it suggest the existence of political and gender-based power dynamics that utilize technology to construct myths about reality? Oh, it's a
Yep.
very heavy question.
Yes. That's a very good question. Thank you very much for Alto Belly. Yes. I guess what I said about the myth is that somehow we see somehow like common people see that technology, particularly digital technology, is neutral. I guess, for instance, we see that a lot of us using the online drivers, right? Online taxi. And whenever there is what a research trying to find out, for instance, whether it is fair for them to receive that kind of salary, when the interview, when they are interviewed, asking them about it, and they say, well, that's the system, right? Like as if the system is fair for them. So this is the thing that, like somehow, like the drivers, like Gojek, Grab, etc., thought that it is fair for them to receive that kind of salary because the system built that for them. Now we need to ask who built the system anyways. It's the capitalists who built that system. And of course, it's not really value free. It is not neutral. It is always, put on behalf, or it is always work on behalf of the interest of the capitalists. That somehow capitalism never really put equal aspect of our life, socially, economically, and even culturally. So asking whether it is humans as the agents, of course I do believe that, because like I do believe that technology is invented because we need that kind of technology, not because of technology is invented in a very what vacuum context. We always need to know that every single invention of technology has the interest of human to put like their humanity further than they thought. Like I do believe that. Have you ever heard of the Jules Verne A Trip to the Moon novel? None of us believe, not at that time, none of the people believe that a trip to the moon. Are you kidding me? No. But there, when the rocket invented, they all believed that okay, so humans can go out of space. No, so that's the thing that, like somehow um, we do believe that every single invention um, is invented because they are part of our dream to be a better human in terms of, technologically, socially, etc. So whether it is humans are the agent who determine the value embraced and conveyed by technology, including those related to gender, political, and so forth. I guess yes. Have you ever heard that women never really what compatible with technology? That's why, like woman always be put as the object, like we knew woman, like the Siri is the woman, but somehow we see that that doesn't mean that women always thought to be close or logical users of technology. Somehow we always see that woman is not really capable of doing this or that compared to men. So I guess there are lots of technology that the usage of the technology is gender biased. And as we all know that the usage as well also kind of like reflecting these sociocultural biases. I do believe that there are still an existing what opinions that technology is always related to male compared to female. That's why I mentioned how the hiring pattern kind of like algorithm get rid of women because the pattern always show that those being hired in technological aspect is always male compared to female. So this kind of thing, I guess, what need to be put in mind how not multicultural it is, the technology, and we need to be aware of that the technology itself is created by a what a system, a society that is still adopt patriarchal ideology, for instance. So I guess we need to realize how uneasy it is to kind of like deconstruct that woman is also compatible with technology, that we need to be realized that somehow all of the technology are always considered as close to male than to female. I think that's it. Thank you very
Okay.
much for the question, Pak or Bu Altobelli.
Okay. Professor, maybe this one is followed question by Mr. Altobelli. Sorry, Mr. Altobelli. So you agree, Professor, with the term I coined that media producer in this digital era have transformed into mediapreneur?
Um, if you would like to follow the algorithm, of course you become mediapreneurs. If you follow the logic of the how to monetize your content, of course you become a mediapreneurs. That's the thing that you need to remember. Some of us always thought that, I produce a very good contents, but how come my good quality contents never as viral as those who, like produce a very low quality of content, but they become viral. Like particularly a content produced by celebrities, etc. You always thought about why they're so what have a lot of followers compares to what I produce. And suddenly you thought that, okay, I will follow that logic. I'll follow that virality, like things that is not really that good quality, but makes sense to the netizen. Don't forget that the social media users, for instance, is not all of them are having a critical thinking. Some of them are only having a technical digital literacy. So long as they can develop an account, they can post the content, they give comments, they know how to share, and that's it. And of course, again, as Bu Ratna Danu said, that this is what the kind of things that we need to consider as the academics to always remember how to give information regarding how important it is to have to not believe 100% of the things that we saw, particularly in the AI era, particularly in Indonesian context, whenever we are coming close to the election, the general election time, then there are lots of, face swapping, voice cloning, etc. And most of the people believe that, you know, most of them. Of course, we as the agent, as you said, we need to be a what you call mediapreneurs, that we understand the algorithm, we make use of them, like to the benefits of the society that is entitled to the good information,
Okay.
not misinformation or disinformation. Thank you very much
Okay.
for the following
Okay.
question, Altobelli.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Yun. I do believe that also, as well, I agree with you as well, that maybe this is exactly why we ended with the idea of humanizing with AI.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was. Okay, we next question from Mr. Arif Budi Prasetya. Thank you, Prof. Yun, for your insightful explanation. I will like to ask As a human machine communication becomes more agentic and shape our information environment, how can we remain reflective and open to diversity while upholding multicultural values without being guided into narrower perspective by algorithmic systems?
First of all, thank you, Mas Arif Budi Prasetya, for the question. Um, It's a very insightful question as well. I think that's the challenge that we need to face. That's why I offer the concept of the digital multicultural literacy, because whenever we just only what expanding the digital literacy without giving them the perspective of multicultural, then we ended up understanding the algorithmic bias, but do not really understand that it is not enough for us to just only realize the algorithmic bias, but we need to realize we need to kind of like empower ourselves to be part of the multiculturalism, the ideology of voicing out the diverse configuration of the society. We kind of like said that the monetization of the YouTube, following the, for instance, YouTube following the importance of who watch what. But whenever we saw that that kind of thing, that content kind of like, for instance, degrading women, kind of like perpetuating the patriarchal ideology, of course, we need to fight back by developing the content that is, like make them aware of uh, the dangers of being only put women as the, for instance, as the victim. For instance, we do know that our netizen in Indonesia is very emotional netizen. They are following what's the main response of the rest of the contents. For instance, if the content say that, like uh, that person needs to be put in jail, etc., then suddenly everyone also having the same. Let alone we need them to realize that they are bots, they are fake accounts, that somehow shaping the comments into particular opinions, which is of course is not right. I guess that's the challenges, Mas Arif, and that is why I think both the digital literacy and multicultural literacy needs to be hand in hand and interplay to make us more critical social media users, or more critical digital technology users. I think hopefully it answers your question, Mas Arif. Thank you very much for the question.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Yuyun. Maybe we stay reflective by not just trusting the system to be balanced, but by treating our
Precisely.
own critical judgment, maybe. Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Yuyun. This one may be the last question of our
Okay.
session. From Miss Rahma. Good morning, Prof. Salam from Sunway University, Malaysia. From Malaysia.
Salam.
I have a question. In your opinion, what measure has the government taken to promote human-centered AI and prevent driven polarization while ensuring compliance with digital ethics? Thank you for such a wonderful notes.
Yeah, talking about ethics is uneasy because somehow there are lots of kind of like fightbacks saying that like in this so-called freedom outlet, the internet, that we know in the beginning of their publicly introduced, the internet always say that, this is a free arena where you can voice out, everyone can voice out their opinion. Unlike the old media, like the gatekeeper is the media institutional itself. But in social media, everyone can be the producer of the information. And within Indonesian context, I guess there are lots of things that government acted already, but of course, there are still a lot of challenges facing this implementation of the ethics. For instance, in Indonesia, through the Ministry of Communication and Digital, saying that, like, the children needs to be have the parents need to be restricted the access of the children for particular games. Somehow, we kind of like a question how to restrict that, how we monitor that, etc. But I guess it is the right way. I do agree with the government that they need to be restricted the access for the children to access only the content that is compatible for them, because I guess the thing that we have already discussed, the dangers of being biased, the dangers of being seeing only the homogenized aspect of the society, for instance, not knowing that there are lots of what diverse culture, etc. Um, I guess that's become the what the foundation of the government to implement this more human aspect of the digital media usage. Uh, the things that somehow impede this implementation, of course, again, is the level of the digital literacy of the society. Some of us thought that it is good, particularly the academics, but some of them thought that it is not hard to, it is very hard to implement, to make the common people, ordinary people, aware of that, aware of the dangers of keep children engaged 24 hours a day, for instance, without any restriction to this monoculture content. So I guess it is the things that we need to be consider how we put more humanized usage of artificial intelligence. We need to kind of like what you call that, kind of like consider a lot about the regulation. Meanwhile, we need to also what empower ourselves, empower the society to have understand why to understood why it is important to have that kind of regulations. Hopefully, it answered your question, Bu Rahma as Zinaida.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Yuyun. Maybe I think that's exactly the real challenge for human-centered AI right now, and it's get back to ourselves before about humanizing the AI. Okay. Thank you so much, Prof. Yuyun, once again for the
Thank you.
presentation, for engaging so generously for our participant also. Let's give her a round virtual applause, everyone. Thank you so much, Prof. Yuyun.
Thank you so much for the very fruitful discussion. Thank you, everyone, for the question and discussion.
Yeah, see you around, Prof. Yuyun, in another time, since
Thank
Surabaya
you.
and Malang is not that far. We
Sure.
may.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a good day,
You
Professor
too,
Yuyun. Thank you.
Ratna.
Okay, all right. That was our final session on the last day of ICODES 2026. Once again, thank you so much for you all, our participation, for being part of our very first international conference. It has truly been an honor for us. And please don't forget to stay tuned in the virtual room, because at the end of the event, we'll be announcing the best presenter and then the selected papers. Thank you so much and see you around. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you to our moderator, Ratna Triwuryandanu SECOM MECOM, for expertly guiding today's keynote session. And our sincere appreciation to our keynote speakers and all participants for your valuable contributions. Ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to welcome you to the closing ceremony of the International Conference on Communication, Digital Ecosystem, and Society ICODES 2026.
Over the past 2 days, we have had the opportunity to exchange knowledge, share research findings, and engage in meaningful discussions with scholars and professionals from various institutions and countries. We sincerely hope that ICODES 2026 has provided valuable insight, fostered new collaborations, and inspired future research.
Before we continue to our next agenda, we would like to once again thank Pop Survey by Populix, one of our valued sponsors, for supporting ICODES 2026. Pop Survey by Populix is an online market research and survey platform that connects researchers, academics, and businesses with millions of respondents across Indonesia. Now, please welcome a representative of Pop Survey by Populix, Seniti Prawira, who will briefly introduce the platform and its benefits. Seniti Prawira, the stage is yours.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I think it's a pleasure to be here at the first International Conference on Communication, Digital Ecosystem and Society. My name is Niti Prawira from Populix. And today I would like to introduce you Pop Survey, a self-service survey platform designed to help academics and organizations conduct research faster, easier, and with high quality respondent. So can you see my screen? Or is it still loading? Okay, all good. Okay, so what is Populix? Before we talk about Pop Survey, let me briefly introduce Populix. We are a research technology company that provides high-quality research solution for businesses, organizations, and government institutions across Southeast Asia. Our mission is to help organizations make a better decision through reliable data-driven insight. We are proud of member of SOMAR, the European Society for Opinion and Market Research. That means all our research follow international standards, ethical guidelines, and ensuring full data privacy and protection for both our clients and respondents. And to ensure data privacy and information security, Populix is also certified with ISO 27001 2022. And one of our biggest challenge in research, I know that it's finding the right respondent. Today, Populix has access to more than 1.3 million verified respondents across Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. Beyond basic demographic, researcher can also target respondents based on lifestyle, financial behavior, media behavior, shopping behavior, and many other criteria, making it easier for you to search and target the right respondent. And introduce you to Pop Survey. We are self-service survey platform that want to build survey accessible for everyone with access to verified respondent and analyze result in one platform. We also integrated AI-powered research to simplify research that might be complex to simplify it. And today, Pop Survey is also trusted with more than 100 organizations, including university, research institution, and a company from various industry. And we are proud to support both national and international academic institutions in conducting high-quality research. And we are proud official partner with Universitas Negeri Malang. So why you have to choose Pop Survey? We have 4 unique selling proposition. The first one, we have diverse respondent criteria. And second, we have a fast turnaround time with 97.5% paid survey completed within 24 hours. And third, we have verified respondent through a multi-layer quality verification system. And also, we are very much affordable compared to other competitors. So how it works, you just have to do 6 steps simple. First, you have to access the dashboard and then choose what kind of type of research that you want to do, quantitative or qualitative, and then specify the target respondent that you want, create the survey, launch a survey, and then the last part, you can get the result within hours. And we have two research solutions. The first one is quantitative research. The second one is qualitative research. I'm going to go through a little bit about our quantitative research. We have comprehensive survey builder. We have advanced distribution system, as I may mention before, that our panel of respondents currently also cover Malaysia and Singapore. We have deep analytics, and we also AI powered, where you can create a questionnaire, you can generate summarization, and also we have the next gen AI research assistant that will help you walk through our platform. And the second, we have the qualitative research solution. Basically, we are the first or the leading survey platform that provide qualitative research. You can do digital qualitative research through us with flexible interview setup, targeted respondent access, and seamless research execution. And I know to create qualitative research, sometimes it takes a lot of time, especially to do transcript. And we also have the automate transcript. So we help you guys to create qualitative research seamlessly. And then we would like to invite you to simply scan the QR code to register to our platform using the codes ICODES 26 to get a discount. We provide 55% discount for all of you who registered today. And then I'm gonna close my presentation. Thank you so much, and I hope PopSurvey can help you to create a research solution where you can do research seamlessly and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much for PopSurvey by Populix for sharing the information to all of us. Make sure to check it out.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now moving to the most anticipated moments of ICODES 2026, the Best Presenters Awards. This year, we are pleased to recognize two outstanding presenters in two categories, the Best Presenter Award and the Best Professional Presenter Award. Are you ready for the name awarded participants? If you're ready, please give us your warmest reaction. For the first awardee to come, we have Best Student Presenter Award. This award recognizes the outstanding presentation delivered by a student participants, regardless of academic degree level, bachelor's, master's, or doctorals. And the Best Student Presenter Award, it goes to Irene Putih Alivia from Universitas Brawijaya, Gabriel Angelica from Universitas Atmajaya Yogyakarta, Arif Budi Prasetya from Universitas Airlangga. Congratulations to all awarded students, and please give us your best smile for the camera.
Moving on to the next awardee, Best Professional Presenter Award. Without further ado, the award goes to Dia Turfa Ila from Politeknik Negeri Media Kreatif, Sevia Dian Pratiwi from Universitas Gajah Mada, Altobelli Lobodali from Kalbis University. Congratulations.
And now we're moving to selected paper awards. For selected paper awards, we're gonna start from Sinta 4 Index category. For Sinta 4 Index category, the first journal is Jurnal Komunikasi Nusantara, Ulfa Aristia Tresna Gunawan, Humaira Fatimah Hakim, Yohanes Perkeman Ebang.
Tutur Logi, Sarjoko, Gabriela Sagita Putri, Rahel Fasya Nurfadila.
Mediakom, Tiara Nanda Dewi, Aryati Mandiri, Eka Febrianto, Latif Fianto.
Jurnal Spektrum Komunikasi, Novita Sari Ibnuso, Tantri Anissa Hanjani, Aryo Subarka Edion, Rifka Sabil.
Jurnal Nomosleka, Yusnaini, Nur Haki, Wirda Trihasfi, Angga Prawadika Aji.
Jisip, Atika Dwi Wiji Utami, Jonas Clemens Gregorius DG, Isma Adila, Dian Utami, Muhammad Al-Bushairi, Elva Sabilal Hikmah.
Lontar, Meli Firdausi Nazila, Aditya Esti Kurniawati, Azumar Aditya Santika. Congratulations to all awarded participants of Sinta 4 Index category.
The next awardee category is for Sinta 3 Index category. The first journal, Jurnal Komunikatio, Hanim Rahmadina, Novika Adi Wibowo.
Reformasi, Krisna Tama, Fidela Ayu Syafira, Muhammad Asif Sa'bani.
Jurnal Komunikasi Profesional, Sopiani Soliha, S. Dinar Anissa Abdullah, Mia Nurmiarani, Zahra Putri Purnama, Ashley Angelica.
Journal of Digital Marketing and Communication, Rona Agustin, Nordina Yunira, Ismatul Khalila, Deviani Setiorini, Andreza.
Reni Tegar Dwi Kurniawan, Hafi Dlatul Fauzuna, Muhammad Kurnia, Ratna Puspita Sari, Grace Virginia Latif.
Muhammad Kamal Bustami, Alfiani Aisyah, Nuria Astagini, Uke Prajogo.
Cakra Komuniko, Nurul Fadila S, Dian Fauzia Aulia R, Sulfina Jayanti, Elena, Kamila Izatun Nisa.
Lenfari, Dinda Delvina, Lutfi Ayu Paramita, Irsanti Widuri Asih, Sena Luktri Diansyah Paweloy, Ajeng Pradesti.
Congratulations for all the awarded participants of Sinta 3 Index category. Now we're moving to Sinta 2 category. Jurnal Studi Komunikasi, Galih Ari Prayugo, Margie J. Waisepi.
Jurnal Media Kita, Rahma Sugihartati, Aryani Himalia Putri.
College, Sharon Wilson, Amar Reza.
Anissa, Lubna Kalula, Gabriel Angelica, Wahyuni, Dia Turfaila, Yuni Lasari. Congratulations to all awarded participants of Sinta 2 Index category.
Moving on to the international proceeding. Atlantis Press, Adip Kurniawan, Ratna Triuryandanu, Sri Wahyuni, Asyari Abdullah, Ais Heriati, Makfira Yuliani.
Fairuza Arindra, Muhammad Yoga Prabowo, Zulin Nurhayati, Francisca Azahro, Septiani, Naifah Kurnia.
Dini Safitri, Rama Romindo Utomo, Syambafi, Anugrah Putri Amalia, Fajar Maulana, Airin Putih Alivia.
Nikeisha Eugenie Febri Halim, Chris Ferdian Nando, Vidya Adiwijaya. Congratulations to all award recipients. Let us give our appreciation applause. May your achievement continue to inspire future research and academic excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, as today's program comes to an end, we would like to sincerely thank all of you for your participation and valuable contribution to ICODES 2026.
Once again, our heartfelt thanks to Universitas Negeri Malang, the Faculty of Social Sciences, Aspicom Jawa Timur, our 4 co-host institutions, Universitas Brawijaya, Universitas Tribuana Tunggadewi, Universitas Atmajaya, and UIN Sunan Kalijaga, Yogyakarta, and Pop Survey. By Populix, our official sponsor, for their invaluable support.
We sincerely apologize if there are any inconvenience during the event. May the connection established during this conference continue to grow into meaningful collaboration in the future. On behalf of the organizing committee, my name is Zahwa Lailatu Zahira,
And Stifian Desnandi Priambodo.
joining you here as your master of ceremony. We would like to say thank you for your participation.
Stay safe, keep inspiring, and we look forward to welcome you again in the next International Conference on Communication, Digital Ecosystem, and Society. Have a wonderful day.